FloridaBicycling.com YouTube channel. Got some exciting news for you today. We're kicking off a series of episodes on building a bike for the Florida Coast to Coast Trail. Today's episode is all about taking a beater frame off a Facebook Marketplace and getting it ready for paint. Now, I'm going to do some special things. Well, maybe not so special things. I'm going to do some things to this frame that I think you're going to want to see. So enjoy this episode and thanks for watching. The donor frame for this project is a 1990s Trek Multi-Track 720, which I scored on Facebook Marketplace for $15. I wasn't sure what I wanted to do with it, but I knew that I wanted to have clearance for 45mm tires. I decided that I wanted to have a frame-mounted top tube bag, and to do that, I needed to add some frame bosses and move the rear brake cable mounts. I don't show the sanding steps because it was incredibly tedious and boring work. So, after the frame was sanded, I built a jig using plywood as a base and some 2x4 screwed into the plywood to hold the frame in place. I then secured another 2x4 over the chainstays to hold the bike steady for drilling and grinding. Okay, here's the obligatory warning. Don't do this to any frame that isn't steel. And even then, there's a risk of catastrophic failure anytime you drill holes or cut things off your bike frame. So do what you're about to see at your own risk. I use an angle grinder with a Harbor Freight grinding cutting disc to cut off the cable guides from the top tube. This was the first time I've ever actually cut anything with the angle grinder, and I went a little too deep on the first cable guide. I learned from my mistakes on the second one. Also, this probably goes without saying, but this produces a lot of sparks, so don't be like me and have flammable things lying around. For this project, I'm adding 2 water bottle bosses to the top of the top tube and 2 more on the side to mount the rear brake cable guide. If you need to get your holes perfectly aligned, you'll need a drill press. Since I don't have one of those, I started by drilling a really small hole for a pilot hole. But as you can see, even getting that started in the round tube was a challenge. Once I got the pilot hole drilled, I was able to use a bit that was slightly larger than my rib nut to drill the hole. Here's what the 2 holes in the top tube look like before I added the rib nuts. Rib nuts, also known as rivet nuts, are small threaded tubes that get compressed from the bottom to form a seal around thin metal like bike tubes. This one hasn't been compressed yet. The tool I use to install the rib nuts is the Easy Nut tool, which I got off Amazon. To attach the rib nut, I added some JB Weld to the hole in the frame and to the rib nut, and then inserted the rib nut, which is attached to the tool, into the hole. The next part is a bit tricky, as you need to hold the rib nut tool with a crescent wrench, and then turn the top of the tool with a torque wrench. You can definitely use a third hand here. Once the rib nut starts to compress and grabs the frame, you'll notice it's easier to hold. The instructions say to torque to 3 to 7 Newton meters, so I went with 6 since that's the upper limit of my little torque wrench. After it's torqued, you can remove the rib nut tool by unscrewing it. Next, I wiped off the excess JB Weld and then cleaned it up with some rubbing alcohol. And this is what the rib nuts look like inserted into the frame. Alright, thanks for watching the first episode in our series on building a bike for the Florida Coast to Coast Trail. Next episode, we'll look at painting the frame, adding decals, and adding clear coat. If you want to learn more about it, you can visit FloridaBicycling.com. Also, if you'd like one of these nifty shirts, you can go to FloridaBicycling.com/shop. Thanks for watching.